that's me. I'm coming to you with a brand new episode of Deck Building 101, and this time I want to talk about paying attention to the meta. As you guys know, we just got a ban list change, and docs just dropped today. And because of this, because of the timing of the ban list and the fact that we're getting a new set, and the fact that we've been in the same format for the past year, which is ending in 3 days, completely ending in 3 days officially. Um, the meta is changing, and it is important to notice what decks are becoming meta. It's not just necessarily right now, but it's always important to be checking because every once in a while, like all of a sudden, a new deck will pop up, and sometimes it might come out of nowhere. Hat came out of nowhere. It was literally a deck built from scratch. Um, yeah, and like just there's all these decks that you wouldn't necessarily think work at first, and then they end up doing. Infernoids, you could say, came out of nowhere, um, from a tier 2 deck to bridging on tier 1, maybe tier 1.5 as of right now. Um, so paying attention to the meta is extremely important. The side deck, of course, is a factor in this. Being able to side in cards you need in order to really give your deck the advantage it needs against the decks that are currently relevant. Um, but because of the fact that we're entering into a new format like we did earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, I would say the true start of this year's format was really the beginning of the year when Cosmos, like around the time Cosmos were dropped, when we first found out about Cosmos. Um, when we had a bunch of different decks at the beginning of the year. If you guys remember, Volcanics got a huge reboot. Ritual Beasts were introduced. Yosenju's made a small impact for a little bit, not too much, but it still made some sort of impact. Infernoids were introduced. Burning Abyss was still relevant. Tellers were becoming a thing, if not already. There were a lot of things going on, and then we come to the April ban list, and a lot of things get hit, specifically cards like Vanity's Emptiness, where that actually prevented a lot of decks from hitting, like having a chance, such as Volcanics. And while you could argue that Vanity's Emptiness as a card is a little bit overpowered, the fact that it allowed a lot of cards to become meta is pretty insane, or at least compete with the meta on a somewhat competitive level. And I'm keep going back to Volcanics because it was somewhat relevant for a little while. I mean, heroes were a thing for a little bit, and I mean they got top 8 in world. So I wouldn't, yeah. So right here, I just have a list of decks that are going to be relevant, if not the top decks, within the next 3 to 4 months as they come out and whatnot. So Cosmos, obviously, #1 deck right now. They are dominating the meta. Dark Destroyer and Strawman really made that deck so much better. It was already good, but it just made the deck just on a whole new level from where it was. As you know, Monarchs are coming out in a structure deck. This is going to be the budget deck of the year. It's super consistent. It's very hard to stop it. It's just because if you stop one 2800 beater, it doesn't matter. They have another one that they can easily get out right after it. So yeah, this deck is absolutely nuts, and it's going to be ridiculous. Magic Specters are a thing right now. The problem with Magic Specters is that they don't have big beaters that they can really rely on. Magic Specter Unicorn, yes, is a card. However, it's not that fantastic of a card, and you can't even pendulum summon. You have to tribute summon it in order to get it out. Which is the one problem with Unicorn. But the rest of the deck doesn't. It has a lot of searchability and a lot of potential. But honestly, it's at the moment the second best deck. But it's going to get power creeped very fast in the form of just decks that are able to get over it, like Monarchs, for example. So Magic Specters, while they are a thing now, will not. I don't think will last long in my opinion. And yes, this is turning into a discussion of the meta, but I will circle back to what I was talking about before. Perform Mages are getting a huge boost, especially in the new structure deck. Like Perform Mage and Pals have been dominating the OCG for the last couple months, and it's Flame Mascot may not be the direct card. This has become, however, this card has become. It's known as Plush Fire right now, but this Plush Fire has become the face of Perform Mages as of right now, until the new Perform Pal stuff comes out, and then it'll become Perform Mages and Pals. So, yeah, this deck is extremely consistent and will have a huge impact on the meta. That being said, we also have Magicians, which you could argue is very similar, if not the same, to the Perform Ancient Pals deck. But Magicians, again, is a very, very consistent deck. As our Tellers, they had searchability for days. Tellers, they rank 4 spam like crazy. And then we also have Mermails. They're getting a huge boost in Neptibus. And they're already a good deck to begin with. They're a solid investment for any player. And but Neptibus is just going to make the deck absolutely ridiculous for at least a format, for 1 3-month format or whatever, like in between ban lists. So Mermails will be relevant for a short time at least, coming this January. So the reason why I want to go through that is just to show you guys how relevant it is to pay attention and to know what is big, because otherwise you don't know how to to build your deck around in terms of how the meta goes. For example, last year Mind Crush was not even on anybody's radar because searching was not a thing. People weren't really thinking, oh, like I can look at their hand and I get to guess. If I know what card they have in their hand, I can not only look at the hand but get rid of that card. If anything, Mind Crush might have been very relevant in the Lightsworn Rulers, against Lightsworn Rulers, because they added to their hand like crazy, with the whole Dragon Rulers plus Eclipse Wyvern plus Judgment Dragon combo. So having Mind Crush against that was probably like the only deck that it was probably completely useful against at that time. And then once we moved into a more searchable format like we are right now, Mind Crush has become a new card, completely usable, not useless, usable card in every sense of the word. Every deck searches, usually with the exception like Yang Zing's. So yeah, but yeah, it's extremely important to check up with the meta at least every week, just because you don't know what cards might all of a sudden somebody came up with something. Infernoids weren't really on a lot of people's radars until they did well at YCS Dallas, and suddenly they become one of the top decks, top 10 decks in the meta right now, and people started signing in a lot of Retaliating Seas in hopes that they can draw it against Reasoning and really just screw Infernoids over. So paying attention to the meta, yeah, it's important just so you know what's going on, you know what the market is like. The market is extremely important. If you have cards that are relevant in decks meta, like in the meta, you either build that deck or you trade for cards that you can trade, that you can use and that you want to use, or sell them in some cases, so you can actually afford some other decks or some other things. So yeah, paying attention, definitely useful. You need to pay attention. You need to be on YouTube. My biggest recommendation to anybody that wants to start playing competitively is to go on YouTube, and to research. Either do YouTube. Zodiac is a great resource. Yu-Gi-Oh! Organization, seeing relevant news as soon as it happens. Anything that shows you things that are like coming, because that is important. Preparing for those things is important. You can only prepare so much, obviously, but preparing for those things. I mean, I think a couple months ago I had 4 copies of Cyber Dragon Nova, and I ended up trading them for a high price then. Back then they were about $1.50, and I was trading them at a value of about $4 because of Cyber Infinity being announced. And now I know obviously that was extremely underpriced, but I didn't know how much they were going to spike. Obviously it's in the future, but like you can always be prepared. If there's a card in the OCG that's just dominating, prepare for it now. Just simply because if it gets announced, those for TCG, the cards that have anything to do with that deck or that card will go up in price, and that will become much harder for you to obtain, buy, resell, whatever. So whatever it may be. So yeah, YouTube, great resource, because one, you get to look at deck profiles, see how things work. Just because you're not playing the deck does not mean you shouldn't know how it works. If you know how it works, then you know how to beat it. You don't necessarily need to know the specific cards, but you need to know how to beat the deck, and that is what is more important all the time. So that being said, this is again another open discussion video. If you guys would like to like, comment, subscribe, do so please, and as always guys, have a nice day.